Hello. Thank you all for being here. My name is Rebecca Bellan. I'm a senior reporter at TechCrunch. Over here to my left, we have Mayor Mahan of San Jose, who was formerly on the city council. You had a big career in tech. Before that, you were a founder of Civic Tech, Consumer Tech, and you also did some Teach for America, which is pretty cool. And then we have Dara, Treseder, CMO of Autodesk. You've been at this for 2.5 years, but before that, you were at Peloton, Carbon, GE. Yeah, what a... and just a reminder to our audience before we get started to submit questions via the Slido, which will be on the South by app. Now, Mr. Mayor, when we talk about...
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning. I know, we got to get some energy into this crowd. How's everyone doing? Woo, yes, all right.
When we talk about, smart cities, sustainable cities, this is something that we've been, at least smart cities, we've been talking about for at least 15 years. Give us a little bit of a history lesson before we dive into the future. So what would have been considered innovative like a decade ago, do you think?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like we're still trying to implement things like a Salesforce CRM that might have been obvious a decade or more ago. So in some ways, I think government continues to be behind because we don't have big R&D budgets or large technical teams that can always be updating the latest and greatest technology. But I do think, and I don't want to get too far ahead in our conversation here, I think some of the newer AI applications give us an opportunity to leapfrog and not have to necessarily sort of rebuild all of those legacy systems, but really think about a very different way of delivering city services. And I know we'll get deeper into that in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. And you're a San Jose mayor, you're in Silicon Valley. I'm sure you get approached all the time by startups that want to implement their tech. What is kind of the bar that needs to be hit for technology to be deployed in your city?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think it's a really important one. Traditionally, the answer to that question would be procurement, which is the bane of everyone's existence. It takes like 18 months to run the gauntlet and hopefully get approved and get that purchase order in and then implement, and then you got to update the contract, and it's a whole mess. And look, that still exists, and I think there's an opportunity, significant opportunity to reform that process. We're starting to do more piggyback off of other jurisdictions that have already procured a technology just to streamline things. But when it comes to newer technologies, AI applications, our city, and I'm really proud of our team for doing this, started in a very scrappy way connecting with other cities that were interested in AI innovation. It started with just a monthly Zoom meeting where about 15, 20 cities were coming together and just sharing best practices, saying, what tools are you using? How's it going? What are you learning? And it has evolved in, I kid you not, just about a year's time from this informal monthly Zoom with a dozen or so cities to over 600 public agencies convened into what we now call the Gov AI Coalition. We just had our first in-person gathering in downtown San Jose, and we have an entire set of frameworks and infrastructure for any public agency that wants to use AI, from vendor registries to incident response plans, AI policy manuals. This space is moving very quickly, but the spirit of it is for cities to be able to quickly pick up and pilot AI tools across any department in a city, county, other jurisdiction, share learnings, and do it in a way that is safe, because we have built out protocols and frameworks for those agencies to think about which vendors they use, which questions to ask, how to protect people's privacy, data retention policies, all of these things that those of you in the tech world are very familiar with, but are newer for many of us in the public sector.
So when we talk about AI tools, AI is everywhere, right? Everything's being AI-ified. So Autodesk has been around for ages, but you're really digging into your own AI tools. What are some that you're seeing cities use a lot today?
Absolutely. So first of all, Autodesk is a technology company, and our software is used to design and make the world around us. Whether it's the buildings we live and work in, or it is the movies and games we love, or the products we rely on. And so our AI technology is being used by cities as they design and address some of the most pressing challenges. There are not enough people, time, or money for cities to build or rebuild all of the infrastructure that is required. And there's increasing pressure on cities to address this. And so how do you, when you don't have enough money, you don't have enough people, and you don't have enough time, this is where technology really steps in. And we are seeing cities use our technology, whether it is around increasing resiliency as they face increasing climate crises and natural disasters. We're seeing cities use it around building more sustainable infrastructure to just kind of really improve the livability of the communities. And we're also seeing cities really using technology as a way to make their areas more attractive, right? There is a skills shortage. And so as cities compete for where people choose to live and work, really having technology at the heart of it is an important way.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of those examples in a bit, but Mayor Mahan, you said that you're talking to mayors all the time. You have this big consortium. What are other cities prioritizing when it comes? Is it climate resilience, or is it? I mean, in California, certainly climate resilience would be big, but I'll let you speak to that. Is it housing, transpo?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of runs the gamut. I think you always have to ask so we're talking a lot these days about how can AI improve the delivery of government services and make government more productive, which is a concept worth kind of pausing on for a moment. If you go back to the 1970s and you look at the last, say, 50 years of innovation and productivity gains, in the private sector, productivity has grown at an average rate of over 2% per year. In the public sector, about 0.5%. So the private sector has been getting more productive at a rate 4 times faster than the public sector, which means for a given unit of capital or labor, you get a heck of a lot more because there's a compounding pattern nature to that. So what we're looking at is how can we take new tools to deliver existing services in a better, more efficient, more responsive, more personalized way? What are the kinds of superpowers that AI might give us? So I'll give you just one. I know we're going to talk about different use cases here, but just one very simple example, and you don't need fancy, this is not an LLM application, but just bus route optimization and timing, right? Pretty straightforward. We want to encourage people, we talk about climate risk and sustainability. We want to encourage people to get out of their single occupancy vehicle and hop on a bus, more efficient. What's one of the biggest impediments? Well, it's frequency and it's the speed of those services. We have, in the last year, piloting AI tools on 2 of our bus routes, reduced the likelihood of one of our public buses hitting a red light by 50% and speeding up overall route times by about 25%. So you were increasing that throughput, making a smoother, more efficient ride, and essentially changing incentives. People are like, wow, hopping on the bus actually will get me to work faster. That's just one example of where we can take a public service we've provided forever. Public transit's been around over 100 years in our country, but we're making it better using new tools.
I love that example because it's making me think about, one of our customers outside the United States, in Bogota, Colombia, who they actually are using our technology to create a 3D model of transportation, and we'll use that to reduce commute times by 1/3 and reduce construction waste by 1/4. So it's that, like, how can we leverage technology? And it's exciting because we're seeing innovative cities, right, like San Jose, right in the heart of Silicon Valley, but we're also seeing this on a global scale. And so I think as cities around the world struggle and wrestle with how do we better serve our constituents, technology is really at the heart of how you start to apply this in real time to address the issues that are top of mind.
How long ago was that Bogota revamp?
Oh, this is something we were working with them just a few years ago, and it's still very much in process.
Yeah, I've been there. Their bus routes they're pretty fast.
It's like technology, right? And it wasn't the case, but having that 3D model allowed you to kind of model and simulate what is needed, and then adjust to be able to ensure that you can actually improve the transportation for the citizens.
So for that one, was it a simulation, or did you build a digital twin, or is
A 3D model. So
a
a 3D model of the transportation system. Think of it like a virtual copy, right, of a real world system that you can then kind of simulate and adjust things. And the way I like to think about it is you make mistakes on the computer, so you get it right in real life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we see that, I cover a lot of robotaxis, and we see that a lot of the testing is done in simulation first, because there's a lot of risk when you put, self-driving vehicles on the road. So would you say that 3D models, is this kind of the bread and butter of Autodesk right now? Is this something that a lot of cities are using? And is it for transportation the most, to ensure that things are moving quickly? You've got bus routes in the right places. You have space for green spaces as well.
Yeah, so 3D models are really, right, they're 3D models, they're digital twins. This is very much becoming the standard, right? You want to have that virtual copy. And it's not only for transportation systems. Just 30 miles from here in San Marcos, Texas, that's a city that is in one of the most flood-prone areas in the United States. And in 2017, there was a flood that devastated the community. So as you can imagine, the city of San Marcos is thinking, how can we address this and prevent this from happening again? Or if it happens again, how do we make sure we're better prepared to take care of our constituents? And they're working with Autodesk technology, have worked to build a 3D model of the storm drain network to understand where are some of the problem areas that we need to allocate our resources to ensure that we can mitigate any risks should a flood occur in the future. And really doing some of that scenario planning. So we are seeing that happen with cities, with infrastructure, transportation systems, and even with, obviously buildings and landmarks as well.
Is this something you're doing in San Jose as well?
I was going to say, just to build on that example, I think it's a great one. Obviously, with the tragic fires in Los Angeles, we're thinking a lot about whether or not we are as prepared as we can be for fire risk. California fires, floods, earthquakes, right? One of the things we're exploring now with our public university, San Jose State, which happens to be across the street from City Hall, is better monitoring and modeling of vegetation or fuel load, you might call it, and basically the buildup of vegetation around the wildland-urban interface of the city. We are surrounded by dense, dry vegetation that could produce similar, if the wind directions are not favorable for us, could produce similar risk profiles. And just trying to better understand across a patchwork of jurisdictions. You have private property owners, state land, county land, city land. We don't always coordinate. One of our big challenges in government is how decentralized things are. We have all these different jurisdictions that have their own incentives, their own elected bodies. We don't always coordinate as efficiently or effectively as we should, but technology can give you a unified view and help you sort of understand, okay, what's going on across, who cares who owns the land? What we care about is fire risk and who's managing the vegetation. Is it happening? Do we need some kind of alert that tells us actually we've got growing risk in this area and we need to go address it? Then we can figure out whose land it is and how to actually action it. But that's something we're starting to dig into.
For that use case, what kind of tech are you using for that? Because I recently interviewed a company that they do satellites, but super low orbit satellites, and so that's something that they provide actually.
So we're not actually in contract with anybody yet. That's our hypothesis, is that satellite imagery is going to be an important part of that. We're just starting the conversation through our budget process this year and talking to our local university about how to put together some kind of pilot or partnership focused on that. But I think ultimately, whether it's fires, floods, earthquakes, whatever it is, there will be some commonalities to understanding where risk is geographically, where those riskiest areas are, being able to update that more frequently than you would without technology. And then something like an evacuation route may actually be shared across different models for different disaster scenarios.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is where digital twin really comes in, to your point of having a 3D model that's not just a replica, but can be updated, right? And in real time adjusted to make sure that you're addressing whatever issues. Given just the increasing climate crisis, I really do think cities need to start thinking about, let's get a digital twin. And I think to your point of technology that has been around for a while but still needs more adoption, I think digital twin, getting that right will really help cities not only address the needs of today and prepare them for any natural disasters or climate issues that might occur, but it'll also allow them to actually start to think and plan for the future, to make the cities more livable and more attractive for people who want to work there.
Yeah, this tech can be, satellite imagery technology, amazing, also probably expensive, right? I don't know how cheap Autodesk runs for, but what would you say to cities that aren't as affluent as San Jose, and when they wanting to do this as well, how do they make it happen?
Well, I will just note, while many of our residents are affluent, San Jose was really built as a bedroom community. So from a tax-based perspective, we're pretty challenged. We have pretty low revenue per capita, believe it or not, because most of our residents actually leave our city to go work in neighboring cities every day. So they really have the tax base. It's Apple in Cupertino or Google in Mountain View. So we face the same kind of resource constraints. Our approach has been partnerships, whether it's working with our San Jose State Public University or big employers. NVIDIA, you've probably heard of, started literally on the back of a napkin in a Denny's in San Jose. We signed an MOU with them last year that creates a framework for us to partner around things like workforce development or adoption of their technologies to pilot civic use cases. And certainly we understand over time, as those tools mature and demonstrate that they can deliver value, there will be a paid component, but I hope that at that point, I think we will be very happy to pay for those emerging tools as they demonstrate that value. But the whole premise behind the GovAI Coalition is that we want to identify the emerging startups and technologies, apply them to civic use cases, pilot them for what should be relatively low cost for us because we're providing the use case, the city workforce, we're applying it. That partner is getting all of that data and sort of opportunity to experiment. We're also getting a potential solution that over time we may be able to pay for. In fact, to further encourage this, we are rolling out, it'll be kind of official tomorrow, you get just the preview here, but we're rolling out a new AI startup incentive program. Last year, we released some office leasing incentives to make it really low barrier to move a startup or any company into our downtown. No business tax for 2 years, free parking for 2 years, and now we're adding essentially grants for AI startups that want to work on social and civic problems and be located in San Jose. Again, right where we have City Hall, our great public university that graduates more technical degrees every year than any other university in California. We want to invite AI entrepreneurs to move into our downtown next to our university and get a desk at City Hall and help us solve civic problems. We might become your first customer. And then there are literally 800,000 other public bodies, agencies, governments out there that can be your future customers after you prove it in San Jose.
I love that. Congratulations. Let's give it up. That's pretty exciting. I absolutely love that. And what is exciting and interesting about this too is talking about how we're using AI to continue to create economic opportunity. And at Autodesk, that's important to us, right? We provide our software for free to students and educators all around the world. We have over 100 million students and educators in over 160,000 schools, including many in San Jose and San Jose State University, right? So when these startups come, not only are they going to get a very supportive community and government, but they will also have access to a skilled workforce, because that's really important, right? If you are starting an AI company, you want people who know how to access and utilize AI technology working for you. And so it's exciting to see that, in San Jose and in some small way, Autodesk will be helping.
Well, we really appreciate that Autodesk makes its tools accessible to students. To your point, Dara, it's so important that we give people, particularly our young people, access to these tools. And one of my concerns with AI is that there can be barriers to entry, upfront costs around having access to the computing power, the data. How do we lower barriers for our young people, whether it's at our K through 12 schools or our public university or our tech museum, to be able to actually play around with and start to familiarize themselves with what a large language model is or how machine learning works, and start to get access to that.
Yeah. And when it comes to startups and civic tech, I think something a lot of startups don't necessarily recognize is that while government resources are constrained, they're actually a really good partner, because a lot of those partnerships last for years, right? If they're not, just a simple pilot.
Recurring revenue.
Recurring revenue. That's what we all want.
We love it.
Yeah, we love it. But just to quickly switch gears, I mean, you've kind of danced around how Autodesk and San Jose have worked together, but you are working together today on something called an 8-block project. Dara, can you walk me through what exactly happening there?
Yes, I'm really excited. And Mayor Mahan and his administration are really very forward-thinking and technology first. Tell you in private, I'll tell you publicly now. And it's amazing when you have government officials who really understand, how do we use technology for good? How do we use technology to solve problems? So we are working on an 8-block initiative that's bringing together data centers, retail spaces, and homes, right, and businesses. And if you can imagine, right now, Autodesk software is actually being used by the architects to kind of design these retail spaces and the homes. And you can imagine a vision where you have the energy that is coming out of these data centers being used to power the retail spaces, the homes, and the businesses, creating this virtuous ecosystem that's energy efficient. So it's really exciting, I think, the work that we're doing together, and the possibilities are there because of that public-private partnership.
And to your point, being able to use software to model things out and in a lower cost, less risky environment, actually play around with the variables and start to really understand, okay, if we make it possible from a policy perspective and others invest and build, how is this likely to play out? Because we want to try more innovative things, but we're a little bit risk averse in government. The idea, even as recently as a year or two ago, that we would have allowed data centers anywhere near our downtown was just crazy. Everybody said, no, data centers belong out in the middle of nowhere in some big field as far away from a vibrant downtown as possible. But actually, and you've got to see it to believe it, right? And that's what the software is partly about. Theoretically, vertical data centers in or near a downtown, if thoughtfully designed into a multi-use environment where they're connected via a district energy system, and as Dara is saying, you can use every electron twice. So all that excess heat, rather than being a liability because it's actually driving climate change, can be used to help you achieve carbon neutrality by heating neighboring buildings. That's a pretty big idea, but to get there requires a leap of faith for those of us in government to actually see it modeled out, to understand the data, and to think about, okay, is this district energy system idea with vertical data centers something that we're even able to get the political will to implement is a real question. Yeah, well, I mean, it does sound like an incredible idea, and I'd love to learn why that occurred to the city and if you've seen other examples of this, but do people, I mean, you say government it's kind of difficult to get ideas past them, but the public as well, do people want to live near data centers? How do you pitch that to the public? I think if you ask it that way, the answer is probably no. Although you'll learn in politics that with polling, it's all about how you ask the question. All right, how would you ask it? I was on stage at a different conference last year with the CEO of PG&E and CEO of Westbank, and we were talking about this concept. So PG&E is our big energy provider, our publicly regulated utility. It's an investor-owned utility in Northern California. And figuring out, okay, we know there's a lot of demand for computing power. There's a huge amount of need and capital, frankly, that is ready to go to build out data centers and expand computing. We know that it needs space, and it generates a lot of excess heat, huge energy demand. And then we're working with Westbank, which owns a number of properties in our downtown, on the future of our downtown. How do we densify gentrify, bring more residential into downtown, and kind of balance jobs and housing. And really it was through those conversations that we came to this thought process that actually maybe you could go with vertical data centers and build out a proper district energy system for the whole downtown and have it ultimately be a place where people live, work, play, and it's carbon neutral.
And I think that's exactly right. It's having people understand, do you want to live in a space where you've reduced the carbon footprint, right? Do you want to live in a space where your energy is cheaper, right? Because it's more efficient and it's been supported by the businesses that are in your local community. I think you're going to find a lot of yes to that.
Well, you,
right?
you put it at risk as well. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it, and it sounds really cool. I mean, the only thing that I can compare it to, I think we talked about this previously, is that in New York City there's a place called Bath House. They do Bitcoin mining and they use that to heat the pools, which is cool. But so this is.
I'd also just say design makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
We're not going to have data centers that are simply large concrete blocks.
Yeah.
We're going to require
Really? Why not? That sounds
some
pretty.
form of ground floor activation, some amount of public art, some public space. I
Right.
mean, we'll be very intentional about how we allow this to happen.
And this is where technology plays a role, right? Because you can kind of simulate. You can say, what are some of what is the negative externalities we want to avoid for noise pollution? How can we make sure there's more green space? How can we make sure that this is aesthetically pleasing? And you can model all of these scenarios in the technology tool so that when you build it in real life, it really gives those desired outcomes.
Well,
and we've seen, we have real examples where we've done that.
Well, when you're talking about like a data center that people live around, if anything happens with the power with that, it could affect the power of people's, lives. Their fridges might go. It could affect a lot of things. And yes, you can test for a lot of things in simulation, but there are always edge cases that you can't test, and this is why it's so difficult to roll out things like autonomous vehicles or autonomy in general, because there's always edge cases, and it's really hard to get those. Like digital twin is not a panacea for we've tested it all.
Absolutely, I think you're right, and that's why we actually need more real-world applications, because as we start to deploy these things in the real world, we start to understand, right? What did our model not tell us that we can kind of take to get this better and get it right?
Yeah, I wonder what that would look like as a test, like a small one. So when it comes to, how else you're using these design tools, we talk about what are cities facing right now in terms of crises. We talked about climate resilience a bit, but also affordable housing is increasingly a problem to solve. How are you using, can AI solve for affordable housing? Is that something you need AI for?
Well, we are already seeing AI being used to solve affordable housing issues. So there is a housing shortage, right? We would need to build 100,000 homes every day to address the housing shortage. That's not possible to do. But technology can help. And an example that I'm excited about, such a California example in Oakland, where we needed to add more affordable housing. There was an unused space. This was an old steel plant that had sat unused for decades. Why? Because it's near a highway. And even people want housing, but they don't want to live near a highway because of the noise pollution. What our AI tool was able to do, our AI-powered design tool, was allow you to do those simulations so we could actually design 316 units in a way to address the noise pollution, ensure there are enough green spaces, address some of the livability concerns. You could model all of that and then actually roll that out. And using AI, we were able to reduce the time to build by half, the cost to build by half, and the carbon footprint by half. So I think we're already seeing that come to life, and you can imagine this being done, scaling this, right, on a global level, and the impact that it would have for humanity to just be able to provide not just affordable housing, but affordable housing that people want to live in.
Yeah, just to add on that, I mean, you asked about use of technology. Our public works department, for example, uses Autodesk and other tools every single day. I think part of the answer to housing affordability won't just be AI, it will be other types of technological innovation. One that is not all that high tech is prefabricated modular units. So the cost of construction in San Jose, the entire Bay Area, many parts of the country now, is just it's cost prohibitive. You cannot charge enough in rent on the other side to cover the cost to build, and so you can't finance the deals to build these things. We just opened it happens to be a transitional housing site for folks who have been experiencing homelessness, who are trying to transition back into permanent affordable housing. But it doesn't matter who you're serving. This new apartment complex that we built has over 200 units. It looks like brand new market rate apartments, private bathrooms, kitchenettes, very nice finishings, all built prefab modular at a total all-in cost of about $400,000 a unit, as compared to the average cost of construction, which is creeping up to $1 million a door. So we're about half of that cost. So now, to be fair, to be apples to apples, we were using public land for that site. So you've got to factor that in. But nonetheless, pretty significant savings. And I think, and this is an opportunity for an entrepreneur in the audience here, I think there's a huge opportunity to speed up and make more predictable permitting with the use of AI. We have what is essentially a standardized set of rules in our building, our general plan and our building codes. So that's sort of structured in some way. And when you apply for a permit, that's structured data. And so really it should not take us 12 to 18 months of back and forth to figure out if you should even be allowed to go build the thing. Yeah. We really ought to be able to use AI to get to answers within a matter of weeks, hopefully, maybe months, but not years. And so I think speeding up and really optimizing the permitting process is part of the next frontier here.
So when you for something like that, or just any way that we're kind of using AI to help us make decisions, does that not open the door to bias or other risks?
Well, look, I think anytime you have humans involved, whether directly or building the tool that you're using, bias is always a concern, and it's something we need to be mindful of. One of the things we've done with the GovAI Coalition is build a AI fact sheet. It's kind of like the nutrition facts on the back of your box of cereal or any other packaged product. You take a look at it, it gives you the breakdown of what's in it, how bad for you it is. Or good, I guess. We have a set of structured questions that we ask of all AI vendors to better understand how their model's designed, which training sets they use, what kinds of questions they've asked, and sort of whether or not they're being thoughtful about questions like bias and security, because we want to know what we're getting into. It's an evolving space. I don't want to pretend that we've figured this out, but we try to be really thoughtful about that. For example, we're doing a lot of work with object detection on city roadways, putting cameras on city vehicles to identify potholes, graffiti, streetlights that are out. We're also, and this is a little riskier, we're trying to more efficiently identify lived-in vehicles. We know we have 1,000+ people living on our streets in vehicles, and we want to be able to do outreach and deliver services, but we do not record or keep any faces. We don't keep it. I mean, we can identify that maybe someone's living in the vehicle without keeping any data that would help us identify the actual identity of that person. And so we've tried, and we have very strict data retention policies where we're deleting data that we don't want to keep because it could be used in bad ways in the future. So we try to be very thoughtful about how we're using new tools in a way that's going to keep everybody safe while making us more effective.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think, is this the same tech? We had talked about this off stage about you're using it also to prevent theft of vehicles.
So we also have an automatic license plate reader network, and this has turned out to be a very powerful tool. So we have put cameras. We already had traffic cameras to monitor traffic flows, and many states and cities have red light cameras. We're using ones that are optimized. You've probably heard of flock cameras, are able to read license plates. And we delete the data every 30 days if it's not being used in an active investigation. But last year, we recovered over $3 million worth of stolen vehicles in the city of San Jose, often very quickly. I mean, we were watching the vehicle. The the automatic license plate readers at major intersections across the city is fed into a single database with kind of real-time analysis that can tell us, oh yeah, there goes the stolen vehicle. Like we can get the helicopter up in the sky and go follow it and get it back. And that creates a deterrent effect. When you start with high confidence, most of the time you're able to go recover the vehicle and apprehend the suspects, people start to decide maybe I shouldn't steal cars in San Jose anymore. And that's been quite effective for us.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good that you have these kind of data retention policies because it can be a slippery slope from, we're solving a problem to Big Brother is watching.
I think about it all the time. I mean, it's always this balance of, we do not want to construct a surveillance state and undermine people's civil liberties. At the same time, the reality is that when it comes to public safety, folks who, for whatever reason, are committed to committing crimes, sometimes very sophisticated operations, are going to use technology and get more sophisticated over time. And so we have to figure out how do we use tools that allow us to be effective and keep the community safe and create accountability and recover stolen property and so on and so forth without putting at risk the fundamental civil liberties that make our country a great place to live.
Yeah. And just a reminder to the audience, we're going to start doing questions soon. So again, South by App, Slido questions, if you have any. Now, when we talk about responsible procurement and just partnerships in general, working with other companies, I mean, this isn't exactly partnerships, but Autodesk last year acquired something like 7 companies per PitchBook data, mostly to beef out tech capabilities. Can you speak to any of them? Were any of those acquisitions specific to helping with urban planning, city planning design?
Absolutely. We acquire companies, of course, like any company, our technology, some of it is built in-house, some of it we acquire companies and bring companies in, and sometimes we partner with other organizations. Some of the companies that we acquired have actually helped us with our industry cloud. So we have an architecture, engineering, and construction industry cloud called Forma. It's a very cool tool, and it essentially helps with that convergence of design and make. So if you think about the urban planning that you're doing, you want to bring in data, right? You want to bring in data about the environment. You want to bring in climate-related data. You want to make sure that you can, even from the early pitch stage process, you can say, will we meet our sustainable goals? Because one of the things about sustainability people sometimes get wrong is sustainability actually comes hand in hand with efficiency and effectiveness when included at the beginning of the conversation. It can actually help you save time, save money, save resources. And so Forma enables you to do a lot of that. And I was actually with a customer recently in Florida, and the customer was telling me about how, they had this part of their process with some of their sustainability business that they were actually losing money on. And after implementing Forma, they were able to increase it to a 30% margin business.
Wow.
So talk about the difference that makes. All of a sudden, they were able to hire some interns. They were able to create jobs, right? They went from, something being essentially unprofitable to becoming very profitable to the tune of 30%. So I think these are ways that we are continuing to say, not only are we looking at our homegrown technology, but what is technology we can acquire to help us better serve our customers as they design and make the world around us. And that very much includes government as we work to make our cities more livable, more workable, and ultimately, hopefully, more enjoyable too.
Yeah, so it seems like that's part of Autodesk's overall kind of push towards focusing on AI and cloud. And recently, not to put you on the spot, but recently Autodesk did have some layoffs. Around 1,000 people were cut. Were those two related at all, cloud and AI investments versus the types of people who are no longer with the company?
First of all, let me say, like our CEO said, we deeply value all of our employees. They're very talented individuals, including those who are leaving, and we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we assist them as they begin their next chapter. Companies and businesses evolve, right? Roles of today are different than roles of the future. We are working to make our go-to-market more efficient. We recently rolled out last year a new transaction model, so there's some efficiency we have to do there. And for over a decade, we've been investing in AI. So AI isn't new for Autodesk. We had generative design with our manufacturing industry cloud Fusion, and that investment continues, right? Because we need to continue to help our customers as they design and make the world around us. And so that investment we've been doing for over a decade continues.
Mm-hmm. Is, going forward, would you say that sustainability for Autodesk is a core principle?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because I say, before sustainability was cool, Autodesk was doing sustainability. When it became cool and everybody joined the party, hey, we're here for it. We continued focusing on sustainability. Whether or not it continues to be cool, we're going to stick with it, you know, because sustainability for us, when we think about our purpose as a company, our purpose is to design and make a better world for all. Sustainability is at the heart of that. And like I said, sometimes there are misconceptions about what sustainability is. The fact is, all of us, sustainable infrastructure is a core part of how our cities are able to be livable, how our cities are able to deliver for their constituents. So sustainability continues to be a critical part of the work that we do. And you know, one of the things that we actually recently did a survey of thousands of customers around the world, and this continues to actually be a top priority for the vast majority of businesses who are in architecture, engineering, construction, product design, and manufacturing. Again, because it helps with efficiency and effectiveness.
Yeah.
So we continue to see it matter to our customers, it matters to us, and it will continue to matter to us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you said that about, you know, it was cool. We'll keep doing it even if it's not cool, because, you know, we've seen other companies pull back on other measures due to political pressure. So I think it's a constant kind of moving chessboard. Now, I think we can move to a few audience questions. I didn't wear my glasses. All right, we'll start with a heavy one. California is known for its inefficient government and high regulation. That wasn't me. That was someone. That was one of you. How are you implementing? Are you implementing?
Way to start in the shallow end, huh?
Are you implementing any specific solutions for your government to be more agile?
Well, I guess there are a few things I would point to. Thanks for the question. And yes, we have gotten a reputation for government, and I don't think we're alone in this. I think in general, many of us are seeing a need to reinvent government for the 21st century and make it more agile, use new technologies, and really be focused on the outcomes we're delivering. I think that there's been too much of the sort of partisanship and virtue signaling and everything but a real discussion about how do we deliver better outcomes in government. I talked a lot about AI pilots and use of technology, so let me share a sort of different thing we're doing that I think is really important. My background, again, was in tech for over a decade. I have tried to bring a performance management mindset to government. What do I mean by that? Focusing on fewer things and being clear about what our priorities are, setting goals, actually defining what success looks like, breaking down those goals into underlying components and looking at metrics that are good proxies for moving toward our goals, and aligning our budget investments around the programs and policies that we believe will deliver those better outcomes. To make it real, something like ending unsheltered homelessness, saying, okay, what's our goal? Well, we want nobody living outside in tents and vehicles. Okay, well, how are we going to get there? And then actually backwards planning with the resources we have, the regulatory environment we're in, what are the things we can do to start meaningfully in a measurable way move the needle, and then create more of a feedback loop. So we have very much constrained our focuses. We've gone from over 40 priorities when I came in as mayor down to 4 primary priorities. We have a lot of other stuff we do, but 4 that we've elevated. Creating dashboards so we can actually say, here's where your tax dollars go. These are the bets we're making. These are our hypotheses for how to deliver better outcomes in these 4 focus areas. And then coming back every quarter, kind of like a board of directors, reviewing the data and saying, what are we learning? Are the things we're invested in, are these programs and policies actually in a measurable way moving us closer to ending unsheltered homelessness as is one of our focus areas? And then I just announced this week that in this budget cycle, I'm bringing forward a proposal to tie our pay raises as elected officials and those of our senior administrators to measurable improvement. And I may be the first mayor, first city to have proposed this, I don't know, but I don't think we should get raises if we're not delivering results. And I think it should be measurable, there should be a clear feedback loop, and we should be able to show you very publicly on a dashboard on the city website, here's what we're focused on, here's how we measure success, here's where your tax dollars are going, and here's the program level performance data, and really create that better feedback loop so you don't just elect the person who raises the most money, has the most name ID, and kind of talks the nicest, right? So that's what we're trying to move toward to make government more responsive and efficient.
So you can see why I'm a big fan of Mayor Mahan. I mean, isn't that awesome? Like, really making sure.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, we don't have to ask, where's my tax dollars going? Like, I love that. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, efficiency is clearly a buzzword lately, and government efficiency at that. So, I mean, it seems like an interesting way, and maybe a less controversial way to bring corporate practices into the public sector.
Well, I think you have to look at, what's your intention and what's the outcome you're likely to deliver? My goal is to make government more effective. I believe there is a very vital, unique role for the public sector. There are a whole lot of public goods that I don't believe the private marketplace will adequately deliver, and I think we need government to be effective, to be more efficient. I want more value for our tax dollars. I'm not trying to gut government, but I also think the answer can't always be another tax or bond. We've got to actually figure out how to take what we've got and deliver a lot more value for people. So that's my mindset. I'll leave it to you to kind of compare and contrast with other approaches out there that we're seeing in government, but at least that's how I'm trying to approach it.
Yeah, and then, so how are you, so just taking another question from here, how are you using technology to make government more accountable, sustainable? How can we believe what you say?
It's a good question, and I sort of pointed to it, but just to take another 30 seconds on it, you can go to our city website, see our council focus area, city council focus area dashboards, and actually go through the dashboards that lay out in great detail, these are the focus areas, these are the goals, here's the history. We now have over a year of data since we established the dashboards, and you can actually look at our data on things like public perceptions of safety. Within that, which is the North Star in our second focus area, making our city safer, we break down 911 response times, the actual crime rates, police staffing, and starting to really kind of get to the components of it, and then we can set goals. In this budget message, I'm asking our police chief to increase the number of applicants in our police academies by 20% because we've got a gap there we've got to fill, and we've got to do it without lowering the bar, but we need to recruit more officers, and we're giving him more resources to do it, but I have a measurable target for him in that budget message, and that'll all be tracked on a public-facing dashboard. So the goal is to take the mystery and the guesswork out of it. Your government should not be a black box. You should be able to go to the city website and really in a very simple and intuitive way understand what people are focused on, where your dollars are going, and whether or not it's actually leading to any measurable impact.
Okay, one for Dara. How can Autodesk be used by communities and community development corporations for modeling and making master plans for the layman and not the CAD expert?
Okay, first of all, I will say that if you want to become a CAD expert, we can help you do that for free. So I just want to put that out there. If you missed it when I was talking earlier, we make our software available for free to accredited institutions all around the world. So if you're someone sitting here being like, I want to learn CAD, you could do it for free. Find an accredited institution. And we love this because not only are we helping the next generation, but we're helping with reskilling and upskilling the next generation. So if you're sitting in the audience, you want to become a CAD expert, you want to learn how to use AI-powered design, Autodesk is here to help you. Just find your local accredited institution. Now, to come to this specific question of how can Autodesk be used by communities, one of the things that's really important to us, why we are excited about the convergence of design and make. This is happening, right? Design is no longer happening in an isolation and then make happening in an isolation, but you're really seeing design and make come together. And you're seeing this come together in AI-powered clouds. So what this means is, even if you're not the CAD expert, if you're working on a project, you can now have access, right, to a 3D model that can help combine and bring people of disparate disciplines together to get the job done. My favorite example is Notre Dame. All of us remember in 2019 when we watched in horror, right, as we saw Notre Dame go up in smoke, and then the French government, led by Emmanuel Macron, worked to say, how can we address this and in record time? And there were thousands of artisans, right, engineers, designers, various disciplines coming together to restore this iconic landmark. And one of the things that helped make it possible was our Autodesk technology. We provided a 3D model that allowed these different disciplines to be able to work together on restoring Notre Dame. So I think one of the things that I would say is, if you're a community or community development corporation, think about getting a 3D model or a digital twin, right? Think of getting that virtual copy that can allow collaboration across disparate disciplines. Because I think these are some of the ways that you can help with making things happen faster, in a more cost-effective way, and also in a way that's better for the environment.
And you don't need to be an expert to use those tools, those 3D tools?
You don't need to be an expert, because it can allow collaboration across a broad array of disciplines.
Right, okay. Another for Mayor Mahan. What assets would you say San Jose has that other cities may not, that enabled you to be so effective at this implementation and become a leader in this space? That's nice.
That is a nice question. Thank you. I mean, I will say with all humility, I think we're learning a lot as we go, making plenty of mistakes, never have as many resources as we would like, and we're often, look enviously at other cities that are able to implement pilots that we can't, but that's kind of the idea behind the GovAI Coalition is we'll test some use cases, other cities will test some use cases, we'll all share those, and over time we'll all get smarter together. I think what's special about San Jose, and you all should come visit, come hang out with us. We're actually hosting GTC, which is NVIDIA's annual AI conference with about 25,000 attendees next week in our beautiful downtown. What I think is special about San Jose that you will find across Silicon Valley and really the whole Bay Area is an openness to try new things. We're an incredibly welcoming, open, and diverse community, and I think that leads to a level of experimentation, creativity, and ultimately innovation that we're obviously pretty well known for. But the idea is just culturally that we start with why not? Why, can that be better? Sure, why not? Can we speed up bus routes? Can we automate pothole reporting? Can we, on and on and on. You just kind of ask the question and people are like, yeah, why not? Like, why can't we make things better? And that's sort of the spirit culturally. Now, in government, I think we still have a lot of work to do to get out of the way and enable more experimentation. As I mentioned at the beginning of our panel, we tend to be pretty risk averse. We tend to be pretty bureaucratic. San Jose is no exception to that. We're probably better than many governments, but I still believe we have a long way to go, especially around things like permitting and procurement, to just be an easier partner, an easier place to invest, and really accelerate the adoption of new practices, new technologies. So that's part of my mission, is to just make us more nimble, more open, more willing to take risks. Within reason, obviously. Unlike startups, which can fail, you really don't want your government to fail. So we're going to try to strike the right balance.
Yeah, well, as you say, I mean, you're in San Jose. There are a lot of forward-thinking people there. It's kind of the culture already. But other cities, this leads into another question, other leaders may be more reserved and hesitant in implementing this tech. Do you have any strategies for talking to city leaders and convincing them to implement more innovative technologies?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on that one, and I know I've said it many times, but I would really encourage any of our civic leaders, elected officials, people working in the administration to join the GovAI Coalition, if for no other reason than you can see what other cities are doing, and it's all essentially open source. You can see our policy manuals, our privacy policies, our security protocols, our vendor questionnaire and question list, and our vendor registry, and you can see the documented use cases. And what we have found, I was a little nervous actually as a former tech entrepreneur when we started talking about our AI policies a couple years ago. I got a little nervous because I thought, oh no, we're going to go overly regulate this thing and just shut it down before we even get started. That was my fear. What I think our team has done a nice job of is striking that balance where we've defined enough of the rules of the road, the guardrails, that now city staff actually feel comfortable saying, okay, there are enough rules, there's enough structure and guidance here that actually I'm free to go experiment. Within the sandbox, I can go try new tools, I can implement them, I can play around with things, and I'm not going to get in trouble, I'm not going to break things too much, I'm not going to put people's privacy at risk or the city's security at risk, so I'm okay in the sandbox playing. You got to define the sandbox, and I think the GovAI Coalition has done a nice job of creating a framework for people in the public sector to use new tools, to experiment, and do it in a way that they have some confidence and feel safe.
I always thought that was an interesting fear, that people thought city or governments in general could stifle progress with AI, because when has government ever made it to innovation faster than tech? But Dara, same question for you actually. Do you work with, I assume you work with a lot of cities. Do you have a lot of inbound? Do you do a lot of outbound? How are you convincing them to use your technology?
Well, I think, we do have a lot of inbound because, again, cities are, there's not enough people, time, or money to build or rebuild. And at the same time, we're also encouraging them to embrace innovation and technology, right? You have some cities, and this is actually kind of around the world. You have those cities and those technology-first, savvy political leaders who are thinking about how can we embrace and utilize technology for good to address the core problems in our areas. And then you have some that might be a bit more hesitant, right? So I think one of the things that's really important is showing people the art of the possible. Like, here's what's possible. Here's another city like you. Here's what they've done, and presenting these use cases that give people a bit of comfort. Because to the point that Mayor Mahan was making, nobody wants to get it wrong, right? In the kind of the government way. It's not like a startup. We can't just fail fast and move on, right? We want to make sure that we are being thoughtful and intentional and responsible. And so really providing the use cases that have been done, those examples, facilitating best practices and sharing. This is another thing that we do, is really enable some of that cross-pollination, which I think ultimately helps city leaders just get a bit more comfortable, right? Because at the end of the day, everyone has to take some risk, right? Getting out of your house is taking some risk, but there's risk that is clear-eyed risk. What is a clear-eyed risk? A clear-eyed risk is where you gather as much data as you can, you strip away uncertainty so you can make a decision with conviction. We want to help our customers, whether they're cities or governments, make clear-eyed risks, because then you're taking on a risk that makes sense, you understand, you have a plan for how to mitigate, and I think people get a lot more comfortable embracing innovation and technology when they're able to do that versus when it feels unknown. Because I think fear, the other side of fear is trust, and trust comes with knowledge and understanding.
If I could just, I love that point, and I think it's worth saying, and we don't say it enough in government, not trying new technologies, not innovating, choosing to just wait indefinitely actually is a huge risk. Yeah. Stagnation is a huge risk. Eventually, it costs more, and you fall behind, and your services are worse, and your tax base disappears, and you've got to take smart risks and kind of know what you're getting into, but holding back and being meek is also not the answer in the long run. It's even riskier to not innovate.
And I would say it could even be more risky, especially given just the natural disasters, the climate crises that we're facing as a global society.
Yeah, great. Well, I think that's probably all the time we have. So yeah, give it up for our panelists today. Thank you so much.